Everybody's got a body, and I know bodies.
I think that AI can be a guide, but nothing can beat my empathy and my life experience.
I'm joined today by three incredible doctors.
What Dr. Google says.
Talking about what it's really like to be healthcare providers in today's world.
I always tell them it's the most dangerous doctor in the world practices without a license.
We're going to pull back the curtain.
When we're trained, you're right. We're trained, no excuses.
Physicians are not invincible.
Hey, I'm sorry, guys. You need mandatory therapy?
So if the person actually knows it's not going to take the time to tell me, I'm going to find out on my own.
Next on the Health Mastery Café.
Hey, it's Dr. Contessa, and you are watching the Health Mastery Café with Dr. Dave.
So guys, I'm excited about this episode. This is the first time we're doing this. We're calling this episode the Doctor's Cafe. What we're doing is giving you an inside view of conversations that healthcare providers have about our passion. That's taking care of you. That's what we really love to do. That's why we're all here. But I also want us to kind of own some of the bad stuff too. And there is plenty of that to go around. To start this atonement that I think that we have to have within our profession. Joining me here at the cafe counter for the very first time is Dr. RJ. She is a clinical psychologist and the author of this very neat little tome called Executive Burnout, 7 Reasons Why High Performers Crash and Burn Before Reaching Their Full Potential. Thanks for being here, Dr. RJ.
It's a pleasure. I'm excited.
Absolutely. And then we've got our cafe favorite, Dr. Tosha Rogers is here. Remember, Dr. Rogers is a board-certified OBGYN and the founder of Atlanta Premier OBGYN right here in Atlanta. Dr. Tosha, welcome back.
Hey, thanks, Doc.
And the only Dr. Drew that you will ever need to know is Dr. Andrew Klein, my friend, my colleague. He's an interventional cardiologist. He's the one that opens up vessels when they block down, but he also plays a really important role in SCI. That's a Society of Coronary Angiography and Intervention, but he's really interested in burnout and helping physicians thrive. Dr. Drew.
Thanks, Dave. Appreciate you.
Nice to have you all. We always start our segments by asking our guests, what's in your cup? So right now I'm drinking some jasmine green tea. Dr. RJ,
I didn't know you were going to get all in my business.
Get all in your
I am
business.
so glad that I finished my Prosecco earlier and I have water right now.
Okay, so it would be Prosecco, but
Yes.
it's water right now. Thank you. What about you, Dr. Josh? What's in your cup?
Surprisingly, today it's just water. These hot
What?
Hot flash.
Oh,
So it's just water.
the hot flash be hot flash.
Hot flash.
Dr. Drew, what you got?
On call, my friend, so just water for me.
Okay, all right, so listen. And we'll have plenty of time for other things. Let's jump into this because we know in healthcare that part of the reason why we have abysmal statistics is partly because we just have a gap in trust. People don't trust us like they once did. There was a time where the medical profession was the noblest of the noble professions, right? And then over time that got eroded. Have we earned this title of we are not trustworthy, Dr. RJ?
Well, I'll start by saying I have an incredible amount of respect for physicians across all fields. Most of my clients are physicians. And I'll say that I think as a field, yes, it has been earned for several reasons.
Yeah. Well, let's go into one. To give us one, the top one that you find is the problem.
I would say physicians are overworked, and so they miss out on building a relationship for whatever reason. It can be policies, procedures, red tape, any of those things. They're overworked, and so they miss the relational piece with their patients.
Yeah, yeah. Dr. Tosha, have we earned this title?
Well, I think that you have two sides of the equation. I think that you do have a population of, I guess we can call it air quote, bad guys. We do have a population of those people who, are not really vested in the patient itself. It's a medical record number. It's a procedure. It's a thing. It's a call sheet. It's not a person. It's not a situation. So I think just like in any other field, you have personality issues, you have personality disorders that plays itself into medicine as well.
Yeah. Dr. Drew, what do you think about this? Some patients say doctors just want to prescribe medication. What do you think about this trust gap that we have?
So I think some of it's real. I think some of it's definitely real. I think we would be remiss not to validate it to some respect. But that being said, I think there's also a lot of myths out there that really don't exist. As RJ said, I think we're overworked. I think we've sacrificed a lot to get to where we are. And there are times where you just say, yeah, this is what we've sacrificed: our lives, hours, countless hours, days, weeks, vacations to get here. We're here to try to figure out what the best option is for you. And sometimes that is medications, and sometimes that's interventions or procedures. Sometimes it's a combination of it. Just figuring out kind of that physician-patient relationship and doing a collaborative work together to make the best choice. I think it's all about the right procedure for the right patient at the right time. That's in my field, that's appropriate use. But I think at the end of the day, I think there were days where in the 80s, I hear about doctors going on, pharmacy related golf trips and stuff like this. I hear about these days, and that's probably where it's coming from. That doesn't happen. I mean,
It can't happen.
I have a regular bit pen right now because you can't have anything. So it's gone the other way. So I think the key thing to understand is that I think those days are, they're in the past.
Yeah. I mean, there is an anti-kickback law. Like, you go to federal prison, lose your job. So nobody wants to do that. And the other idea that we only want to prescribe medicine, and I've said this multiple times, nobody's going to go spend $200,000 in medical school, go through the anguish that we go through just to prescribe medicines. At the end of the day, everybody up here, we went into the field that we went into to help end human suffering. At the end of the day, that's all it is. We do have a communication problem because we haven't said that to people in a way that makes sense. I wanted to read this. The research says that people lack trust in healthcare systems because they feel three things. One, they feel disrespected. The second one is we lack transparent communication, some of the jargon that we use, for example. And then the third one is the healthcare system seems to be driven by profit. Dr. Drew, you just talked and kind of mentioned that. Take me back to that piece when the disrespect becomes the prominent reason why people don't trust us.
So I think that the disrespect extends from lack of cultural awareness. I think that, you learn to do things a particular kind of way. And let's be very real, normal with everything, healthy with everything, regular with everything is based on the white male agenda. Right? So if you are a white male, you learn to do things a particular way. A white female, even some Black people who've been trained in a particular place or a particular way. Yeah. So you're speaking to
everybody's trained to
exactly
off their own perspectives, right? They're trained to behave off their
perspectives. If you're speaking to Ms. Obo or OB and she's from a different country, well, you said four things and all four of them have disrespected her. And you don't get that. You don't understand it. You don't know. So we don't factor into our training or even into our sense of importance, cultural awareness.
Yeah. And, sometimes it also depends on how it's brought about because it can seem accusatory.
Right.
So Drew, you and I talked, when we were preparing for this about a situation that blindsided you, and patient said, listen, you're not treating me fairly. Can you take us through that situation?
Yeah. So, I mean, I had a situation where I had an older Black couple there was a question about whether or not the patient should get bypassed, the patient should get stents, and sort of situation like this. And I spent a long time with them. And actually, you have to take into consideration, especially as a white male here in the South, as I've raised up to some of my white counterparts, do you not remember Tuskegee? Do you not remember major issues that are still very prevalent here? This is atrocious. And so you have to have that be like, and I'll be very forthright and say, I am not coming at you from this perspective. This is the perspective I'm coming at you with. And I'd be very transparent about it. And I think it's being very sensitive to that issue. And it's really, really hard because what you said is right, especially in cardiology. Everything is off Framingham study, a bunch of white people in Massachusetts, right? That's does not apply to the majority of people that we see in our clinic here in Atlanta. And it's well, you got to take it into consideration. So being sensitive to it, being understanding about it, being culturally aware of it. And then if you don't know, just asking.
The perspective that just because you're white doesn't mean that you've got, that it's going to undermine their care. And to have been accused, because it sounded like you were accused just out of...
I was accused of being somewhat almost racist in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And I was like, let's stop. Let's stop right there. Let me tell you what I do. Let me tell you about my background. Let me tell you about growing up, my best friend was black. Like,
I
I grew up in the Northeast. It's a little bit different where I grew up.
Yeah.
It's a little different. I said, you have to take into consideration this was people that this couple was from the South. So we're coming at it with two very, very different perspectives.
And that has to feel, I mean, you have to go back on defense on that. I mean, I can't imagine that it wouldn't be any other way. That's a striking scenario that we don't often talk about when we're talking about the cultural sensitivity.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think when it's difficult to see the other side of it until we have conversations about it.
Right.
And I also think that if we get back to basic rapport building, asking questions, and understanding that people are the experts of themselves, and we're there to facilitate their care, we're there to listen to them, we're there to apply our training to help them, but they are the experts of themselves, then it's back to the basics of respect and human connection.
Yeah. Disparities play a role in the disrespecting part. And Dr. Tosha, you kind of talked about the cultural sensitivity. It's not just racial disparities, gender disparities, socioeconomic disparities. Tell me what your thought is about that in this idea that this is one of the reasons people don't trust us and how we can fix it.
And it's really interesting because how can I say this? More poor people feel like stuff is racist. People who have money understand it's a capitalist thing. Maybe somebody didn't talk to you that way because you're necessarily black, but they feel like you think a way, live a way, and do a thing because you're poor.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we talk about this stuff in medicine, the disparities of this and, food deserts, this, we're not thinking in terms of black and white. We're thinking in terms of rich or poor.
Yeah.
But people who actually are poor think more in terms of color. So oftentimes we're not even on the same page. Even if you stop to think about it sometimes, if you get a black patient in the room, we have all had this experience as African-American providers that they don't necessarily trust our word as much as they would a white doctor.
Absolutely.
Sometimes they do not want a black doctor. They do not trust you. I've literally had in 2024, they're like, I've never had a black doctor before. I'm sorry, where do you live?
Right, yeah.
Where
That's still happening.
It's still happening. And they're literally like, well, I'm going to trust you, but. So, and we have the same, we're cut from the same cloth, but so at the end of the day, it is where people are, your experiences, your socioeconomic divide determines your experiences, and your experiences determine your mentality.
Yeah. And mentality determines your health and your longevity.
Exactly.
What happens when we make mistakes? So are we taught to say, hey, listen, I made a mistake? Or have we been taught to try to just glide over it as best we can? If we're making mistakes and we don't own up to it, I can see why people don't trust us. Tell us what you think.
You gotta come forward with mistakes. I mean, mistakes happen. I mean, I've had, if you're gonna do this job, you're gonna have complications. But if you establish a rapport with them and you talk about what's going on, and hopefully you've had that upfront awareness, like, look, we're gonna try this. This is gonna be really, really challenging. I don't know how this is gonna go. And when something happens, you have that, okay, well, you did tell me. Or vice versa, maybe you didn't get a chance to meet him before. Now I'm doing a procedure. Now something bad happens. You're just honest. You got to be open and honest about it. If you try to glaze this over, I mean, any malpractice attorney will tell you that you should be open and be honest with everything, because people don't sue you because you messed up. People sue you because you pissed them off.
That's right. Right. Yeah. No. And so it sort of makes sense. Dan Ariely, who was on the podcast, quoted the statistics that says doctors that own up to their mistakes get sued less.
Yes.
Why don't we do it more? Because I don't think we do it as much as we should.
Some of it can be ego. It can be ego. I'm the authority. I have the white coat. I'm the doctor. I know what's happening. And although there are some amazing doctors, all right, I've had the benefit.
Thank you. No.
Having amazing doctors. All aren't so amazing. Some are dismissive, right. Some are condescending. And so unfortunately, everyone is stuck into one basket,
right,
depending on their experiences. So the not admitting to the mistakes, or the not saying, I could be wrong, these are the risks, these are the other factors. They're like, I'm the authority and you don't know what you're talking about, so that's it. And that still happens.
Yeah. Dr. Tosha, what do you think?
I have a little bit of a different perspective. While I 100% agree with Dr. Drew, I 100% agree with Dr. RJ. I would challenge people to look at it from this perspective. As a doctor, you're trained. You make a mistake, you speak up about it, you talk about it, You give clarity, you make sure they understand, and if they sue you, they sue you. It's nothing you can do, right? But when you are employed and you work for a health system, you're told to do the exact opposite. Risk management will come on site immediately. Don't talk to anybody. Don't have a discussion with the patient.
Really?
Don't, oh yeah. Don't do this. Don't do that. So the hospital, the administration, and the legal team of the hospital will quickly tell you the absolute wrong thing to do is have any communication with the patient. So although that doctor may seem to be dismissive, because it happened to me in residency, thank God I never had any cases outside of that, but in residency, and they quickly got to me and said, you do not talk to this patient. You do not discuss the case with the patient. You do not discuss it with anybody. You discuss it with legal, and that's it.
So actually, let me dovetail to that. In my experience, has been to actually, I've been encouraged to talk to the patient as an attending. Now, as a resident, it was a different story. But I think the bigger problem is if you have a bad outcome and it gets into that potentially maybe a lawsuit, the administration or anybody will tell you, don't talk to anyone. And really what we need is to talk to someone.
Exactly.
We need to take the time off. We need Dr. RJ.
Exactly.
We need to decompress from this and actually get ourselves and not have
For us too.
second victim syndrome. And so that's the problem we have, is that we don't have a system that is a safe place to protect us, so that if I have a bad outcome and I'm upset about it, I can't talk to anyone about it because it may become a lawsuit. And now if I have a therapeutic relationship with a therapist, then that's a different story. It's under confidentiality, but you're not supposed to talk to anyone about that.
Right.
Yeah, well, and that's what I think, Professor Ariely was saying, that's the wrong advice, and the research shows it. So I wanted to transition here to AI. I'm going to read this. A chatbot that was developed by Google was more accurate than board-certified physicians in diagnosing respiratory and cardiovascular conditions in this particular study, among some other conditions. Compared with human doctors, the AI managed to acquire similar information during the medical interviews, ranked higher on empathy. The AI system matched or surpassed the physicians' diagnostic accuracy in all of the 6 specialties considered. Now, listen, because we've talked about it before we got here, how I feel about AI.
Yes.
Is it time for AI? And can AI help us, for example, when it comes to some of these problems that we're having?
Well, as a psychologist, I always think about the middle path, right? Extremes never have the answers. And so I think that AI can be a guide, but nothing can beat my empathy and my life experience and me looking someone in the eye and showing compassion. So AI may be able to give us the bullet points, the more statistical things, the robotic facts. However, it should be a combination of the two in order to give patients the best care.
But I wonder how it scored better on empathy. And I wonder if the human is more robotic than we think. Dr. Tosha, what do you think?
So interestingly, I think that since we've decided to cut down on training of newer doctors by half of what it used to be, I think that AI should be used as a training tool. I think that, we have these mock situations, these training situations, even when we're in med school or even in residency. I think that let's start putting these situations or scenarios through AI and then pairing them with what our residents or our medical students come up with, and then see where you lacked and where they surpassed, and see what we can come up with to help the doctors train better. So I think it should be used as a training tool, not as a true diagnostic tool or therapeutic tool, because sometimes, as a physician, sometimes you don't know why you feel what you feel, but you're like, something ain't right. My spidey senses are tingling, something ain't right.
That intuition, which the machine hasn't figured out how to do.
Exactly.
Now, I actually will go on record to say it will eventually figure out how to do that.
It will.
Just like this study, small study, this was a small trial, showed that the machine was more empathic. Drew, what do you think about that?
I think it's BS. I don't think the machine can be empathic like a human. I'm with you, Art.
I think part of what we're hearing is that the machine may be able to listen and repeat back
Exactly
what
What
the
comes across.
patient heard, and that's how we feel empathy. We feel heard and understood when someone can tell us what we're feeling in our own words.
Yeah. Well,
That's probably what it's doing.
But that's what psychology, sociology tells us. Mirroring
Yes.
makes somebody feel heard.
Yes.
It turns out that in this small study, it's only one. I mean, we're not hanging our hats on it, but I think it's still worth talking about. It was better than the humans at mirroring.
Oh, yeah.
It also doesn't forget, right? So we got a million things going on, phones are going off, we're getting distracted by a million things. The machine's going to remember. So, there are times, I'm sure you've had this day, where, you've done 5 things. You've made 5 changes in a clinic, maybe 2 medicines, maybe you're ordering 2 procedures and you're doing something else. And then I usually come back and say, okay, so at the end of the day, I just want to tell you, so we're going to do this, we're going to do this. You have this problem, you have this, and I'm at like 3 now. I'm like, what's 4? What's 5, right?
Yes.
The machine's not going to forget. And the machine's going to be way better. I looked at a fungal infection today on someone's foot, and I'm going, yep, you need a dermatologist.
Right.
Yep,
Right.
yeah. But the machine is going to tell me, here are the 50,000 things that it could be. And based on statistically, this is what's there, this is what's there, this is what's there. Yes, I think that's very helpful. But I think if we're really talking about people and really mirroring, if we're doing the right thing, we should always meet the machine on empathy.
Yeah.
We'll never beat the machine on data.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think it's going to evolve, and time will tell. There's this concern that AI will eventually take people's jobs, and that will be true in many regards. But AI right now is not going to take your job. Ted Sarandos from Netflix said, AI will not take your job. The person who uses AI the best
Yes.
is going to take it.
I agree. I agree.
Let's talk about social media and TikTok health. So Tasha's to be like, yeah, it's TikTok healthcare. We're talking about a patient. What do you guys think about social media and healthcare?
So I think that the whole the drive that allows these TikTok pseudo professionals to be able to kind of get the ear of people is the fact that they can get the ear of doctors. That's it. They
Can or cannot?
They cannot.
And
They're not being
good.
heard by their providers. So the thing is, what do? As people, we assimilate, right? We evolve, we
figure it out.
assimilate, we figure it out. So if the person who actually knows is not going to take the time to tell me, I'm going to find out on my own. And I tell my patients, be careful, because for every paranoia you have, every condition you have, every situation you have, there's a fake expert on social media really ready to drill in,
Super convincing.
say some crazy stuff,
Yeah.
and ultimately sell you something.
Yeah.
So be very careful. But they'd rather buy the wrong thing because somebody said a couple of things that made sense than not buy anything because we didn't say anything.
What do you think about that? I mean, social media is accessible. They're talking people's language. They're going where people are. That's a failing of the medical establishment.
Correct.
That's why people turn to it.
And says we need to outnumber them.
Agreed.
We have the information. We know the accurate information. Our challenge is stating it in a way that is going to catch these people over 120 seconds and being able to get the good stuff out there.
That's right.
We got to outnumber them.
Right.
And we're just not.
And one of those 3 things at the top of the segment when we talk about why the trust gap is so wide is communication. We just speak a totally different language and we will not change it. What do you think about that?
So I think the statistic is we learn 10,000 words in the first 2 years of medical school. 10,000
I
new
learned
words.
10,000 words. Oh, that's pretty good.
New words, right? So
Oh, man.
the reality is that, and this kills me, because how many times do you get these questions like, I read my medical chart and now I have, I don't know, mild mitral regurgitation. What my valve's leaking? Like, yeah, but that's within normal limits. Or my cholesterol panel looks green, but you're telling me I need a cholesterol medicine. I'm like, but you're in a different category. And, the problem is that that distrust does come up. Like, well, tell me what do you mean when Dr. Google says this? Like, you type in shortness of breath to Dr. Google, it could be one of a billion things. So it's really important to understand that, yes, Google's always there. Social media is always there. But again, you need to back it up against your physician. And hopefully it's someone you could trust and will give you the information that needs to be done. Because sometimes what Dr. Google says, I always tell him, it's the most dangerous doctor in the world, practices without a license. Be aware, ski with care. You know what I mean? You gotta be careful.
But you don't know what you don't know And when people are, there are going to be some people who watch this and be like, yeah, right, whatever, so who's in your pocket, right? We have not been on offense when it comes to atoning for the problems.
Agreed.
It's not just Tuskegee. I got a whole list here, right?
Don't get me
Tuskegee, the sterilization and gynecologic procedures against people's will, right? The smallpox and radioactive iodine in Native peoples. I mean, the truth of the matter is, just because it was done to subpopulations, my thought is that a wider population would be like, oh, you did that to them? Well, what would you do to me? I don't trust you guys.
Right.
So when we get up here and we're trying to say, hey, we're okay people, folks are like, yeah, right. We have not gone on offense, accepted our problems as a group of people, and atone for them actively.
Yes.
And communicate differently. Dr. RJ, what do you think?
I think specifically for psychology, we have done a lot of harm, right? A lot of harm with biased research, with snatching children away from their families because they don't have enough money, with overdiagnosing Black boys with ADHD when they really just need some fresh air. We've done a lot of harm, and that's why, especially our community, they're like, I'm not going to therapy. Like, for what? And so as we're talking about atoning, it's our job to come down from our ivory towers. And for me, that platform is social media, and to say, I'm a real person, I make mistakes, these are the issues, let's work together. Yes, I'm an expert, and I have this knowledge, that knowledge, but let's work together to get you to where you need to be.
So social media is here to stay. I think it's going to be like AI. I think we have to command that space. And this happened in COVID. It's a great case in point. The bad actors usurp the conversation, the narrative. And we're saying, that's not even physiologically possible.
Right.
Like, it's not possible for that to occur. But they were on offense and we were on defense. We can't keep doing this. Part of the other reason is, like, I don't have time. Drew right now has to be putting a stent in somebody. He's here, helping us do this. We don't have time. Physicians, healthcare providers, we get burned out. Drew, tell us about that part. Should we be saying to people, hey, listen, I'm burned out. That's why I'm not so good at communicating.
So the reality of the situation is not even only the burnout. Let's just go a step further. One physician every day takes their life.
Physician suicide.
Physician suicide. One physician. Now, it's one every 11 minutes for the general population, which is worse and more terrifying. But just think of that. One every day. And yet we're not addressing it. I was told, the only people, I try to tell people this, and I probably say this in clinic every week. In our generation, Gen X above, the only people that would go to therapy were crazy people. And I go, who goes to therapy? Smart people.
That's right.
Smart people who are tired of being hurt or have a pain and they can't live with it, or they're dealing with a whole bunch of stuff and they want to find a better way.
Yeah.
That's who needs to go to therapy.
Yeah.
And, as much as there's always these generational, I'm like, if you're in Gen Z and don't have a therapist, there's something wrong with you. And I think that's great. Yeah. We've gone the other way, right? I mean, it's great because, and hopefully that generation will come up to us and say, I'm sorry, guys, you need mandatory therapy. Yeah. Because that's what we need. We need a state-regulated mandatory therapist for all physicians.
Yeah.
And it should be paid for by your employer. Right.
Right.
And if that happens, I think you're going to find a lot better people. Because at the end of the day, I always say the world would be a lot better place if we all had little SSRIs and we all had a therapist. Think about how great the world would be. We probably wouldn't have as many wars, probably wouldn't have as much conflict, and we could learn to communicate because 99% of all conflict comes from lack of communication.
Yeah, smart people get therapy. Evolved people get therapy. Healed people get therapy. Physicians, caretakers are people. This is your wheelhouse. Yeah. Executive burnout, physician burnout. Tell us what you think about this.
Well, before I say that, I'd like to share that Dr. Drew thought I was a millennial, and I am, in fact,
come on, millennial.
Gen X.
Gen X. No, but I'm just saying, it's just,
It's a whole.
You're so young. I mean,
I needed to share that.
Yes. Okay. Yes. Okay.
So this is the thing. When I think about, again, physicians, I'll say, because I said this earlier, I have an incredible amount of respect. Just the amount of training, the amount of time you're dedicating your whole entire life and well-being to helping someone else. You're missing out on all the regular developmental things that people get to do. So when everybody's when you're in residency, it's like you missed a whole part of life, and you wake up and it's like, what happened?
Yeah.
Right? I'm saying all that to say that physicians are not invincible. And because you all do so much and you do it so well, sometimes you can have this feeling of, well, that's not going to happen to me. I'm going to be okay. I can handle it. And that's so dangerous. Mm-hmm. If anybody needs someone to listen to them objectively, often it's those who are helping others on a regular basis.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. What do you think about that, Doctor?
I 100% agree. I think that when we're trained, you're right. We're trained, no excuses. Even when I was training, my chiefs would say, Rogers, I don't care why. I just care what. Did you do it? I don't care why. I care about the what.
Right.
And so you were always trained to just go and joke. Nobody's going to care why you can't do it. Nobody's going to care that you're sick. Nobody cares. Did it get done? Is it able to get done? Are you able to do it? And we're trained in that way. But at some point, we got to stop the train and say, you know what? Why matters.
Yeah.
At some point, why matters, because the why is ultimately going to impact how well you do the what.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that whole idea of suck it up, walk it off. Well, that's, rampant in sports. And we get that from this big boys and girls. And that's why we're seeing what we're seeing in professional sports, particularly football at this point. Where do we draw the line of communicating our woes to our clients? Our clients are our patients. Do we tell them, you really just have to know that I'm burnt out? Because there are people who are going to say, well, you should have chose a different profession.
Yeah, so I had this experience, and I think it really, I think it's very, I think it's actually endearing to patients if you can actually do it speak from a true place of vulnerability. I mean, I had an experience where it was 6:30 at night, or maybe even later, and I turned to a patient and the family and said, you're next to do this procedure. It's 6:30 at night or 7 o'clock at night. It's not going to be easy. And I'm not as awake as I was at 8 o'clock in the morning. And I would love to reschedule this. And I'm just going to tell you that I would prefer that we do this 8 in the morning, because if something goes wrong, I'm not going to be able to react to the level. I'm human.
That you normally could.
That I won't be able to.
That's right.
And that went a lot further than just going and just doing the procedure. No, it took a lot to do that, and that was very much against our nature. That's like, please, I don't want to hear, I'm sorry, I want to hear why you're going to get better.
Yeah.
Like, I could hear it. And I'm like, no.
What?
Yeah, what are you going to do to get better?
Yeah.
But you got to say, you got to be honest with yourself. Saying, if you've been up to 18 hours, you've been up 16 hours, you've been up 24 hours, you can't operate at that level. You need to be aware of that. And also aware that when you're driving home, you might get in a car accident. You got to be more aware of that. And I think we need to open up and be more vulnerable.
I think that is, from the patient side, that's super important. And for the physicians, we rather hear that from you all. My husband had to have an emergency craniotomy. And I'm like, who's the neurosurgeon, right? My nose is in the air. And he comes in later, he floats in the room. He has a nice tan. His hair is all combed. He's fresh from head to toe. And I'm like, I want him. Give me him, right? Because he's well rested. He doesn't look frazzled. And I feel like he is able to take care of himself, so he can take care of my husband. So on the other side of it, right, I think we can appreciate that more if you do take the time to rest, because that gives us more confidence that you're going to be on and present and alert.
Yeah. And I can tell you on the other side, Drew, of having patients who may have had to wait a little bit longer, spend the night in the waiting area, that they appreciate that. The inconvenience pales in comparison to some potential complication, and they love it, and they're endeared to you forever.
Absolutely.
Isn't that a page that we all should be reading from? That's a page we all should be reading from. I wanted to end, I really think this conversation is going to help a lot of people, including our colleagues. I wanted to end by getting your thoughts in your own sphere of practice. What's something that you want people to know that you think they just don't know?
I think that you can be competent and amazing and need help at the same time.
Competent, amazing, and also need help.
Yes.
Because none of us is perfect.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Dr. RJ. How about you, Dr. Tosha?
For the patients, I think that you guys should always assume the best. Nobody sets out to come in to harm you or hurt you. People work from the tools that are in their toolbox.
Yeah.
Okay. For the providers, I think that out of respect for yourself, respect for the field, and respect for your patients, have the wherewithal to know when you don't have the tools to fix what needs to be fixed. Either pass it along, or like Dr. Drew said, wait until you do have those tools. But don't just run to do it, to get it done. And then when you have a bad outcome, say, well, you know, it was one of the risks, so going home now. So I think that, you know, from the patient's perspective, have an optimistic viewpoint or an outlook, and from the doctor's perspective, be okay with being human and realizing that, you know, this might not be the patient, the time, or you might just not be the person.
Yeah, and if you're not okay at this point with being human, it's what Drew said. It's time for some therapy. Drew, what about you?
I think the key thing is I'm, now at that midlife sort of side where you go, something, I think everybody needs to approach things more with curiosity and less with judgment. Mm-hmm. And so and that's especially for the provider. So if someone says something that I find jarring or offensive, instead of reacting to it, just saying, tell me a little bit about that. How'd you get there?
Yeah.
How'd you understand that? Like, help me understand that. And then it opens up dialogue. And if you can communicate, you're going to resolve most conflict. And you can even agree to disagree. But at the end of the day, I think assuming good intentions and try to approach with curiosity, not judgment, that's what I would tell people.
Yeah, it's interesting. When you just take a beat instead of that reflex response, mm-hmm. you're like, whoa, now I understand the person. But that's all relationship. Mm-hmm. But certainly that doctor-patient relationship, let me understand why she just will not take this therapy that I know can save her life, right? Something happened to her great-grandmother and she never wants to be like that again. Mm-hmm. So us just remembering, we call it in my office, let's give ourselves and our patients a human moment, right? We are human after all. I want people to be empowered by the idea that the relationship between a doctor and a patient is one of being hired. You hire me to work for you. And if you will approach the relationship that way, knowing that you hired me, I'm going to give you the best advice that I can give you, and then you go make the decision. We echoed that on this panel. And that if the decision or that the advice that I give you does not hit that well with you, that you know you can go for a second opinion. It's too often that people just feel bridled. That, okay, I went to this one physician and they said this, I don't agree, and they just stop. Mm-hmm. And what we're teaching on this podcast is go and find another opinion and another opinion until you know that you've got the information that you need to make the informed decision. And then for our colleagues, to just be human first, to be human first, to be human often, and to be human only. If we will do that, I think all of our lives would be a lot better. I'm so grateful to all three of you for being here on the Health Mastery Cafe. And you guys know what I always say. There is nothing, literally nothing more important than your health. Now go master. My DJ, go DJ, it's DJ Chalet.